The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my favorite panel and yours, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. And today we have a financial question that Dr. Bound wants to ask Dr. Gershwer. So here we go. Financial questions.
Financial question.
Yeah.
Hold on. Before you ask this question, I just want to say that the idea that anybody would ask me a financial question is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
I understand.
My father would be doubled over laughing just thinking about that.
All right. Well, actually, we've talked about this before, and just as we were sitting here, the Fed has dropped the rate by 0.25%.
Okay.
In response to, as what they're saying, a weak jobs market.
Okay.
Will it drop? So, hey, you follow this a little bit more than I do. Do you think that dropping it by 0.25% will improve the job market? And does this basically indicate that the Fed is believing the numbers that are coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that there being fake numbers is actually fake news?
Yeah. So, we did talk about the jobs numbers last week,
right?
And it is not. I mean, that report came out before that switch.
Correct.
So there's nothing fake about that.
Right.
But the idea here is I think that the job market has been bad now. We don't know for how long, because what they didn't put out last week was the month by month. All they said was over the past year, we've lost, I forget what the number is, 600,000 more jobs than we thought we lost. Or we didn't, I don't know, let me put that differently. We didn't gain the 600,000 jobs that we thought, or 900,000 jobs that we thought we had gained. We didn't gain them. And because of that, and because we actually lost jobs in June, which is not apparently a part of that report, it was March to March, we know that the job market is in really rough shape. And so we need to lower the rate and get the job market going. The question is always like, if you lower the rate, then you're probably going to have inflation. And my guess is, well, it's not really a guess. I think what they're saying is that they're going to lower. They didn't lower it a 0.5%. They lowered it a 0.25%.
0.25%, right?
Right, which is like Trump wanted a 3% drop.
Yeah.
His new guy, Mirren, who just joined basically on Tuesday, I think. Yeah, he joined on Tuesday before they started this meeting. He voted for a 0.5 point. And we don't know, I don't think they make it public how many people, joined him in that, but you can imagine that there's probably others who said a half a percentage point. So the Fed is in a period of a little confusion, let's call it. Because when you drop interest rates, inflation tends to go up. But with the tariffs that, having raised interest anyway, it's not the problem of the Fed. It's not monetary policy that's causing that. It's I guess fiscal policy, it's political decision making on the part of the president, whether he's really allowed to do it or not. And so inflation is going to happen, but we know the reason that inflation is happening is because of tariffs raising prices and not because of monetary policy. So why don't we go ahead and lower it a 0.25%, and we'll see what happens. And if we still have, I think there are 2 more meetings this year.
Yes.
There's still 2 more meetings, October and December, where we can decide whether we need to raise rates, lower rates, or keep the rates the same.
Right.
So
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that
Okay.
was my first thought. That was my first thought when I saw this that flashed across my screen, was that the 0.25% was to mitigate the cost on business for the tariffs. Now it's going to, will it mitigate 0.25% mitigate those costs that tariffs are costing companies? I don't believe that that's even close to enough. That's probably why Trump wanted 3% in a hopes to, that would mitigate these tariff expenses to the companies. However, if that happened, yeah, the companies may be doing a little bit better off, or maybe, balancing the books or breaking even on the whole thing. But the rest of the economy, the consumer economy, goes into reflation, or even worse, stagflation, into that kind of a dynamic. So I guess my question, again, I'm the economics I get. I also believe that it's kind of like being a meteorologist. You could be wrong 50% of the time and you still get paid. But I guess my question would be is, and you've looked into this more than I have, is changing the rate by 0.25% and having a bad jobs market as we have today, and having the tariffs putting so much pressure onto companies, and we've mentioned it before in this podcast, it's a matter of companies trying to build factories can't build factories because there's tariffs on the stuff to build factories. So you could reduce the rate as much as you possibly want, but if you can't buy the stuff, and we're beginning to see that other countries are actually just not going to trade with us. The hell with it. They're just going to, back out. Is this the spiral? I mean, is this the downward spiral where the only thing that could possibly correct this, and I'm not even thinking that could correct it, is to abandon this crazy tariff idea, but then you've got to be able to go to these other countries and say, listen, we were out of our mind. We're very, very sorry. We're not going to do it again. We promise. And I know you probably can't trust us because we say one thing and then we do another. But hey, take a little bit of mercy on the United States here, and just let's get things back to the way it used to be. I mean, is that what we're looking at, Scott?
Well, even after, sorry, just 1 second, with the debacle with the South Koreans, and the fact I understand now that the South Koreans are actually opening an inquiry into how their citizens were treated by ICE because they were rounded up, I guess, on September 4th, and they didn't get home until the 12th. And for those days in captivity, how they were treated, apparently, from what I understand, was appalling. And South Korea is looking at opening an inquiry in human rights violations, and I mean, it's pretty awful. So incidents like that are going to at least have the potential to derail international relations between the two nations for what was a very strong ally. So if that affects, I mean, and now the British are being very, very kind, of course, and giving Trump this huge royal welcome and all this and that in the hopes that Trump treats them nicely. And who knows what he will say, as you say, next week in the, as we were talking last, in our most recent recording, who knows what Trump will be announcing at the United Nations. I mean, this man cannot be appeased. So, I mean, I don't know where this ends for our economy.
Okay, well, I have a bizarre theory about that, actually. But let's, before I get to that, let's just say that the idea, if Joe Biden was still president and his policies were involved and not Trump's, there was no doubt that they would have lowered the rate probably twice now. And they weren't doing that, which is one of the reasons that Trump has been complaining about it, because they're worried about inflation more than they're worried about the jobs. Now that the jobs turns out to be worse than they thought, they're kind of going, okay, well, we got to do something about this. Inflation be damned. And we're going to lower the rate as we would have done if it wasn't for these other factors involved, like the fact that we have a really different kind of president than we've ever had before. So they're going to go ahead and do that. They hadn't done it so far, but they're going to do it now. They're only dropping it 0.25%. Like I said, this is kind of like a 40-degree day. It's not nice enough out to, to really love it. You're not heading to the beach or the park or anything like that. It's not cold enough to complain about. It's just kind of what it is, right? But they're going to be looking at the idea of unemployment rising, okay, but probably only to just below 5%, which is what they consider full employment, right? Full employment has always been 5%. If unemployment doesn't go above 5%, they're okay with it. It'll be 4.5, it'll be 4.7, whatever it is, but under 5. At the same time, they're going to lower interest rates to try to get inflation to be at like 2.7, 2.8% rather than 2%. They don't want it going. They don't want to go into 3. They certainly don't want to go above that. But they're gonna do what they can do to keep it there. So it's not a great economy. We're looking at GDP growth of like 1.6%. It's not, it's not awful. It's not great. It's growth. We're not going to enter a recession, right? That's the idea, I think, there. But this is what the master plan really could be. And if it is, I have to say it's freaking brilliant. We know that tariffs are like absurd, right? As I've said 1,000 times here, tariffs are like 1.6%, 2%, maybe 2.2%. Like tariffs is a really low number. But now tariffs are like 15%. In some cases, 50%. In some cases, more. Like with China, I think it's even more than that. If Trump goes, I'm going to lower tariffs across the board to like 5%, this economy takes off like a rocket. And that's what he's counting on. He needs them to continue to do this, to do what they would have done had he not been president. Continue to lower rates, not worried about inflation, not worried about unemployment, and he's going to use, and that's monetary policy, and he's going to use his policies to drastically increase trade, and the economy takes off. Prices drop, right? All of a sudden, people are like, okay, we can live with 5%. It's close enough to what it used to be. And we're not fighting a war anymore with anybody. We're not fighting a trade war with anybody. And the economy just takes off.
I'm not sure if he'll do that though, Scott, because Trump was writing like back in the 1980s that trade is bad. And I mean, this is something, tariffs, are something that Trump seems to have gotten into his mind, and it's rattling around in there and filling all the space. And it was either Lutnick or Besant, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was asked by an interviewer, a journalist on one of the programs, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, whatever it was, I don't remember, but I remember very distinctly. He was asked if the Vietnam, for example, were to lower the tariffs on the United States to 0, would you reciprocate and lower the tariffs that the United States is charging Vietnam to 0? And he said, no, we would not. And the person who asking the questions was stunned, saying, but I thought this was supposed to be reciprocal tariffs, and that the United States, we were charging other people tariffs because they were charging us high tariffs. And so apparently that's not what we're doing. Right. That's the last sentence is I don't remember if the person said that or if I thought that to myself. So what the reason we're charging tariffs seems to drift all over the place, from fentanyl to having a deficit, although with Australia we have a surplus, and with obviously islands with penguins and seals we don't have any trade at all. In Brazil we have a surplus. So I mean none of it makes any sense.
Right. It's incoherent. You are
Exactly.
100% correct. It is incoherent. It makes no sense
Exactly.
at all.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
And look, you're falling into using his language. You just said we're charging them, right?
Yeah, and we're not. We're charging ourselves. I understand that.
Exactly. Like our
Yes.
revenge is that American people are going to pay more money. But I think
Yes.
that's been the plan all along. That you
So
can make the American people pay more money.
Thank you for pointing that out, Scott. Yes. So supposedly the United States, we're charging others in the sense that as trade slows down, other people may not have as much trade with the United States, but of course they're simply going to find other people to trade with. I keep hearing Marco Rubio's voice in where he said, unfortunately, where he said, well, they have to deal with us, or some idiotic comment like that when Trump was first discussing these tariffs. So, well, they have to deal with us, or they have to trade with us, or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, no, they don't. Excuse me, they'll find somebody else to trade with. They don't have to do anything with us. Are you an idiot? And apparently, yes, he is an idiot, because everybody can look to China or someone else to trade with. They don't have to, at least with China, if you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
If they're steady and stable and reliable, you know what you're getting. If you sign a contract with them, you know what you're getting. Whereas with Trump, you don't, because the tariffs jump all over the place, and it's on and it's off, and it's this and it's that. And he is completely unreliable and unstable. And no businessman would behave that way. And no one wants to deal with him. I mean, if I were another country's leadership and I didn't have to, I wouldn't want to deal with him. I'd rather deal with somebody I know I can rely on.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, Brooke. It's true that when you're dealing with China, you're probably getting cheated, but at least you're getting cheated. So you go on and you say, okay. It's like when you go to the car dealership, you're getting screwed over, but you buy it anyway. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. But at least, like the car dealership example, when the dealer says, okay, $25,000 for this car, and you come out and you say, okay, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to run down to the bank, grab the $25,000, come back. When you come back, he says, oh, no, changed my mind, $35,000. It's a matter of credibility, and it's a matter of knowing that the person that you're dealing with, even though they may be consistently in one way or another screwing you over, and that's really what business is about. How much you can screw over the next guy. That's what capitalism is all about. And that's what we know.
Again, my theory all along has been that they're going to soak the American consumer.
And they're doing it.
Because they can. Because we're not going to boycott. Because we're not going to do without. We may gripe about it. We may be unhappy, but we're not going to gripe. On the sell side, which is what we're dealing with farmers, right? Who have lost their markets, right? We've seen so much recently about soy farmers losing like 94% or something like that of their market because China's boycotting American soybeans and buying them from other sources. They're going to get taken care of, as they were in the first Trump administration, through socialism. They're going to get payouts. And there'll be higher payouts in red states than they will be in blue states. And if you want to get the higher payout, you're going to have to become a red state. And if you're friendly to Trump, you're going to get more than if you're antagonistic to Trump. But it's going to be Trump who's deciding who gets what. And that, my friends, is what he had planned on doing all along, what he is dreamt of doing. We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund. We're going to have a big ballroom at the White House where he could hold court and listen to people's proposals and see what tribute they're willing to pay him. And then he'll decide what they get. It is classic rentier stateism in that the government doesn't, take money from revenue from the American people to spend, but instead it uses a resource to fund it and then pays the people, right? Rather than, they're not going to be there. You're not going to have as many jobs. Unemployment will go up. Farmers will be out of work. Farms will be lost, but you're going to get paid for it to do nothing, I suppose, except love Trump. And it sounds really crazy, but it is how like oil states have worked, right? Where the entire population is on the dole and the government pays people out. It is completely in line how he looks at being powerful and helping friends and destroying enemies. It's in line with that. I think that this is the game plan, and that because the stock market will react favorably, I think the wealthy people who get most of their income from share prices are going to do better, and that means that there's more money to spend. They have more money to spend, and they're going to continue to come to Trump and say, we want to buy all the farms in Iowa. And he'd be like, great, you have the money, go ahead and do it. We're going to buy all the beachfront property in Gaza. We're going to buy all the beachfront property in Puerto Rico. We're going to, and he lets them do it. He lets them get more money. He lets them get more land, more assets. And in exchange for these oligarchs getting what they want, he gets more power. And that's what he wants. He wants more power. And that is fascism, right? Where the decisions of business are not meant to suit the consumers, not meant to suit even the shareholders, really. It's only there to serve the power, the leader of the country, the leadership. And that's how Putin runs his country, and he admires that greatly. It's how oligarchies work. It's how rentier states work. Dictatorships work. That's what he wants. And I think he's engineering it to get what he wants. And he's going to have an internal army, by the way, to put down any kind of protest. And eventually people will settle down and say, as long as I get what I need, I guess I'm okay, which has been the Russian way. They pretend to pay us and we pretend to work, right? Since the Soviet days. And when they was, for a very brief period of time, they were a democracy. They didn't like it. They wanted to be told what to do. They like that. After decades of it, they like it better rather than the chaos of democracy and having to go out and earn a living. So, yeah, at some point, I don't know, probably not for another year, maybe sooner, tariffs will come down to a more reasonable rate and the stock market will skyrocket and goods will be cheaper than they are, in the next few months. And it is completely in line with Trump's habit of creating chaos where there was none before, solving it and saying, look at me, I solved the problem. without mentioning the fact that he created the problem in the first place. That is good Trumpism right there.
And hopefully, actually, yes, Scott, you did answer my question. Great job.
It's
And
insane.
thank you.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's incoherent.
As insane as it is, it answered my question.
But,
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
It might just be the plan.
Yeah. Well, we will see, but that actually makes sense.
Does it?
Yeah, it does. It does. So we will see. My concern would be if other nations decide that they don't want to trade with us at all. I mean, we cannot produce everything in this country.
But here's what Lutnick said to that. I'm glad you brought that up again, because I meant to say something about it when you said it the first time. I didn't get a chance to. Lutnick said, hey, man, where are they going? They're the feeders. We're the eaters. Who are they going to feed if not us? They can't feed each other because they're all feeders. We're the only eater around. So you need to start feeding us some more. Understand?
Yep.
China can't become the United States of America. Chinese consumers can't become us. Only we are consumed the way we do. Bitching and moaning about prices, but buying nonetheless. That is the natural resource. The national natural resource of America is the American consumer.
And that is exactly the way it is. And the only thing I would say to that is that although nobody consumes nearly as much as we consume, and there's no doubt about that because we have the wealth to do it, when the eater becomes too poor to be able to be fed, now what happens? And they'll find
imperialism, Mark.
Imperialism. That's exactly the point. That's when you get imperialism, because that's the only way you can control society. And let's face it, governments are there to control society. That's their function, is to control society. That's what the function of religion is to control society. Once the United States no longer is in that position of being the great eater, now those other feeders have got to, figure out what they're doing. And I totally agree with Scott. That's where imperialism comes into play. So
it sounds awful to me, to be honest. And it also, unfortunately, sounds quite plausible and quite probable. And
well, maybe what we'll do, Brooke, is we'll say it's a prediction, and then we know it won't come true.
That would be nice. That would be very nice.
We're predicting. Therefore, the rest of the world, you could just all sit back, relax. We predicted it here on the Nova Society, and everybody knows our track record of predictions is absolutely horrific. So nothing to worry about. Nothing to see here. Move on.
Well, I guess we'll find out what happens if we all live that long. So thank you both. And thank you to all our listeners for spending some time with us on the Nova Society. If you're not yet subscribed on the platform of your choice, please do so. Subscribing is free, and we do appreciate subscriptions. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you again next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert, cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.